In every Nigerian boarding school, there is one name that makes junior students walk faster. Not the teacher's name, not the principal's, the head girls. Because teachers have rules they must follow. The head girl, the wrong one, has none. At Graceland College for Girls in Ibadan, that name was Adeze Okonkwo, and in her final year, one student disappeared. One student who had made the mistake of standing up to her. By the time the school found out what really happened, it was already too late to pretend they hadn't seen it coming. Graceland College sits on a hill on the outskirts of Ibadan. From the road, it looks like everything a Nigerian parent wants for their daughter. High walls, clean buildings, a reputation for producing doctors and lawyers and women who carry themselves with dignity. The brochure shows smiling girls in white and yellow uniforms, well-maintained hostels, a chapel, a library with actual books in it. What the brochure does not show, what no brochure ever shows, is what happens inside those walls after lights out. What happens in the corridors when the teachers have gone home. What happens when you give a 17-year-old girl absolute authority over 300 others and tell her she has earned it. Power is a test. Not everyone passes. I got into Graceland in SS1, Amara says. Scholarship students. First in my local government to get in on full scholarship in 6 years. My mother cried at the gate when she dropped me off. She told me, Amara, this place will change your life. She was right, just not in the way either of us expected. Adeze Okonkwo was appointed head girl at the beginning of ISS3. She was 17, tall, light-skinned, with the kind of confidence that fills a room before she enters it. On paper, she was everything. Top 5 in her class, captain of the debate team, church prefect the year before. Her file was spotless. Her teachers loved her. Her parents were prominent. Her father is senator. Her mother is surgeon at University College Hospital. The junior girls feared her. That distinction matters. The first time I saw Adeze, I was in SS1, Amara said. She was walking across the assembly ground with 2 of her friends, and every junior student in her path moved. Not because she said anything, not because she looked at anyone, just because she was coming. I remember thinking, what kind of person makes people move without speaking? I found out slowly, the hard way. Adeze's authority at Graceland was total. She controlled hostel assignments. She controlled who got kitchen privileges and who didn't. She decided which junior girl ran errands and for how long. She determined, in ways both visible and invincible, the social hierarchy of 300 girls living in close quarters, far from their parents, and she used that authority the way some people use a knife. Not always to cut, sometimes just to remind you it was there. Ngozi Eze arrived at Graceland in the same year as Amara. Same scholarship intake, same dormitory block. But where Amara was quiet and observant, Ngozi was something else. Ngozi was the kind of person who didn't know how to make herself small. And in Graceland, under Adeze, that was dangerous. She was brilliant, genuinely brilliant. The kind of student who answered questions before the teacher finished asking them. She had opinions, she expressed them, she laughed loudly, she took up space. She didn't understand yet that certain spaces weren't hers to take. The conflict between Ngozi and Adeze began in second term of SS2. Small things at first. Ngozi Bonk was reassigned to a worse position without explanations. Her name disappeared from the list for the inter-school quiz competition, despite having the highest score in the trials. When Ngozi asked why, she was told by a senior prefect speaking on Adeze's behalf. That decision had been made and were not open for discussions. Ngozi discussed it anyway, but that was her first mistake. I told her, I said, Ngozi, let it go. You don't understand how this place works yet. She looked at me and said, Amara, I understand perfectly how it works. That's exactly why I'm not letting it go. I didn't know whether to admire her or be frightened for her. I was both. What followed over the next several months was a campaign so quiet and so thorough that most of the school either didn't notice it or choose not to. Ngozi's belongings were moved, hidden, damaged. Her study materials disappeared before exams. She was assigned the worst chores: cleaning the staff's toilets, scrubbing the dining hall floor on Saturday mornings when other students were resting. She was excluded socially, systematically, completely. Girls who had been her friends began to distance themselves, not because they wanted to, because they were afraid. Amara said, I watched it happen, and I am ashamed to say that for a long time I did nothing. I told myself I was being practical. I told myself one person couldn't change anything. I told myself Ngozi was strong enough to handle it. But the truth I have had to live with is that I was afraid. Plain and simple. And my fear kept me quiet while my friend was being destroyed. By the middle of SS3, Ngozi had lost 12 kilograms. She was sleeping badly. Her grades, once the best in the class, had dropped significantly. A teacher noticed and flagged it to the house mistress. The house mistress spoke to Ngozi privately. Ngozi told her everything. The house mistress told her she would look into it. Nothing happened. When Ngozi told me what the house mistress said, or rather what she didn't say, something in Ngozi changed. I saw it in her face. It was the look of someone who had just understood that the system designed to protect them has decided not to. 3 days after that conversation with the house mistress, Ngozi went to Adaeze directly. It happened on a Wednesday evening. Common room. Roughly 40 girls present. Ngozi walked in, found Adaeze surrounded by her usual circle, and said, in front of everyone, what she had been building towards for 2 years. I was there. I will never forget it as long as I live. Ngozi stood in the middle of that room and she listed everything, every reassignment, every exclusion, every missing item, every opportunity stolen. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't crying. She was calm in a way that was more powerful than shouting. She ended by saying, you have done everything in your power to break me, and I am still standing. And I want everyone in this room to know what you are. The room was completely silent. Adaeze looked at her for a long moment. Then she smiled and she said very quietly, okay. Just that? Okay. And that smile, that quiet okay, frightened me more than anything else that had happened. Because I knew Adaeze, and I knew that okay didn't mean she was done. It meant she had decided to finish it. 4 days after the confrontation in the common room, Ngozi did not appear for morning assembly. Her bunk had been slept in, her uniform was missing, her school sandals were gone. The assumption initially was that she had gone to the sick bay during the night. She hadn't. I knew something was wrong before anyone said anything officially, Amara said. I knew it in my body. I went to her bunk that morning and I just stood there looking at it. And I felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with the weather. I went to the prefect on duty and I said, where is Ngozi? She said she didn't know. I went to the house mistress. She told me not to panic, that Ngozi had probably gone to the bedroom or the sick bay. By noon, she still hadn't appeared. By 3 p.m., the school quietly began an internal search. By evening, they called her parents. The official story, released carefully and quietly to parents by the school administration, was that Ngozi had gone missing from the dormitory and that the matter was being investigated. What the administration did not say, what they actively chose not to say, was that several girls had reported hearing an argument near the back of the dormitory block the night before, that 2 students had seen Ngozi walking toward the back after lights out, and that she had not been alone. Ngozi's parents arrived at Graceland within hours of the phone call. Her father, a quiet man from Enugu, who had worked for 15 years to give his daughter this opportunity, sat in the principal's office and asked one question. Who was she with? The principal said they were still establishing the facts. Her father asked again. The principal said they were cooperating fully with authorities. Her father stood up, walked out of the office and called the police himself. When the police came, real investigators, not just local officers, things changed very quickly. They started interviewing students individually, privately, away from the prefects, away from the teachers. For the first time in 2 years, girls at Graceland started telling the truth. Because for the first time, they were being asked in a room where they couldn't hear them. What emerged from those interviews was a picture that the school had been carefully not looking at for 2 years. Systematic bullying, institutionalized abuse of authority, a house mistress who had received complaints and filed nothing, a pastoral care system that existed entirely on paper and on the night of Ngozi's disappearance. 3 students who had seen or heard things they had been too afraid to report until now. The reconstruction of what happened on the night of Ngozi's disappearance took investigators 10 days. This was what they established. Adaeze had sent a message to Ngozi that night through a junior girl. The message said to meet her behind the dormitory block at 11 p.m. That she wanted to talk, that she was ready to end things between them. Ngozi and I have asked myself 1,000 times why she went. Ngozi went. Maybe she thought it was over. Maybe she thought Adaeze was finally backing down. Maybe she was just tired and wanted peace and chose to believe that peace was possible. She went alone. Behind the dormitory block, there was a gap in the perimeter fence, known to students, ignored by staffs for years. It led to a narrow path behind the school that ran along the edge of a steep drainage channel. Investigators found evidence of a confrontation at the fence line. Disturbed ground, torn fabric, matching Ngozi's uniform caught on the fence wire. And at the bottom of the drainage channel, 30 meters from the fence, they found Ngozi Eze. She was alive, barely. She had been there for nearly 18 hours. Adaeze Okonkwo was taken from her dormitory by investigators on a Thursday morning. She walked out of Graceland College in her white and yellow uniform with her chin up and her face composed, the same way she had walked across the assembly ground for 3 years, like the rules did not apply to her. At the gate, her mother was waiting. Her father was on the phone. They had already retained a lawyer. I watched her leave from the dormitory window, and I thought about all the times I had watched her walk across that compound and felt fear. And I felt something different that morning. Not triumph, not relief, just grief. For Ngozi, for the 2 years of it, for every girl in that school who had learned to make themselves smaller to survive one person's cruelty. And then I thought about the house mistress, sitting in her office, knowing and doing nothing. And I thought about the principal, who had built a system where this was possible. And I realized Adaeze was the face of it, but she wasn't the whole of it. The school's reckoning came slowly, but it came. The house mistress was suspended, pending investigation. The principal issued a statement that satisfied nobody. 3 additional members of staff were questioned about their knowledge of the bullying complaints. Ngozi's parents filed a civil suit against the school. It was still ongoing at the time the story was documented. Ngozi Eze spent 3 weeks in hospital. She had fractures, exposure injuries, and damages that the doctor said would take much longer than 3 weeks to fully address, but she was alive. She sat for her WAEC examinations from home that year. She passed with distinction in 7 subjects. She's currently studying medicine. I went to see her after she was discharged. I sat across from her in the parents' living room in Enugu, and I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't do more. I'm sorry, I was afraid." She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "Amara, you were a child in a system designed to make children afraid. So was I. The people who should be sorry are the adults who built that system and chose to look away." She was right. She was always right. That was always the problem for people like Adaeze. Ngozi was simply always right. There is a kind of violence that leaves no bruises, that happens in full view of everyone and is seen by no one, that is carried out not with weapons but with authority, with the quiet, daily, relentless use of power against someone who has less of it. Nigerian boarding schools have produced some of the finest minds this continent has ever seen. They have also, in their closed walls and their cultures of silence, produced some of the worst cruelties. Ngozi survived. Not every girl does. If you are in school, in a workplace, in a room where someone is using power to destroy another person, and you are watching, you are not neutral. Silence is a choice. Choose differently.